come.
Because and I want to say that, you know, the people who live in Ghana, the people who grew up in Ghana are as much victims as the African American coming, because growing up, going to school, the books you read, the things you are taught, it just tunes your mind to, you know, see it that way. That is how it is. Until you grow up, until you learn more, you don't see it in a different perspective. And so, how do we search for the truth? And I'm so glad we are talking about things like this, because now we know the truth, and then we can know, you know, either way, how can we make it better? You get it? Yeah. So yeah, sure. So then, what we can do is change the system. Change, you know, what are we teaching the kids, so that when they grow up, how do they see these people? How does the system change? You know, it shouldn't be like this forever. You know, it should change at a point, right? So yeah.
And I just want to piggyback on one point too, which is I notice something harmful that we are doing, that we can easily, because we recognize that we're doing it, we can easily undo it. But I think that we need to understand that from a Ghanaian perspective, or just in general from an African perspective, there's all kinds of colonialism and neo-colonialism that plays into a brainwash on the continent, right? But what happens is we get into these dialogues, if we even can get into these dialogues, and what we end up doing is comparing and contrasting struggles, right?
Happens all
we
the
end
time.
up going, well, slavery happened to me, and colonialism happened to you, and we still found a way to open a business, and I still found a way to get a degree, and we do that dance, as opposed to going, it was all jacked up.
Yes.
It was all jacked up.
Why do you think we do that? We start comparing the struggles like that.
Because we see a figure, and that figure may be someone like President Barack Obama, put some respect on his name, forever president, right? We see someone like that, and we go, well, he can do it, right? And he can do it, and so can all the rest of us, correct? But what happens is we put that person on a pedestal, and it means that we're in a post-racial era, and we're not, because on his, you know, during his 2 terms, that was when we had Trayvon Martin being murdered, okay? That was when we had Mike Brown being murdered. That's when we had more of a threat to our black men and black women. Sandra Bland, you feel me? Say her name. So it's not that we all of a sudden get to a place where we compare and contrast because we're doing anything productive. We're just comparing and contrasting because we're like, yeah, all that slavery stuff, all that colonialism stuff, yeah, but you should still be like President Barack Obama. It erases something, and it's harmful.
So you have these dual identities, or let me say multi-identities, that arise. And I think particularly coming from a place like America, what you see is the central part of our identity, first and foremost, is the color of our skin. But then you come to Ghana and you realize the color of our skin is not necessarily the most prevalent or the most salient part of our identity. And then there's some friction that happens, right? You are Bruni. You have money, unlimited. You can just go to the ATM and just pull out $1 million and you'll be fine. But another part that I don't think we talk enough about is, let's say, the other identity, being a woman or being a man, and how that plays out in Ghana. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I remember when we first moved here, my wife would come home and she would tell me things that happened to her in a taxi or Uber, and I'd be like, really? That never happened to me. And then when we stayed here longer, I realized, okay, there's a very big difference between men and women in Ghana. So now, what I want to do is talk about those dual identities. You're coming, or you're here, right, as a woman of the diaspora, but then you're a woman in Ghana. How have the dynamics of being a woman in Ghana have been different than being, let's say, a woman in the U.S.? Or even in other places in the diaspora that you've been to, or in the world, let me say that.
I don't know. I mean, I do know. I do know. Yeah, if you have something you...
So yeah, I want to talk about like being a woman in Ghana, my perspective, growing up in Ghana, even as a woman. It's almost like God is here, the man is here, and you are here. We are always at the lower side. Times have changed, but you know, there was a time there were women couldn't do a lot. Women couldn't be in big places. Even today, if you're a woman and you're at a big position, like at a workplace, there is still some kind of like, you know, how did you get there? You know, did you sleep with a man to get there? It's almost like you can't be there. It's almost like you can't, you're like, that is just it. You should be here. The man should be here. So that's how it has always been. And so even for marriage situations, you see where they say, okay, if the man cheats on the woman, it's okay. They say, oh, you know, forgive him. It's okay. As for men, this is how it's supposed to, like, that's what men do and all that. But if a woman, she cheats on her husband, it's like a taboo. It's like, it should never happen. But why is it like that? Because they don't put them at the same level. Yeah, so for me, as a woman living in, even for education, there has to be affirmative action. There was a point there has to be affirmative action where they give the women some, you know, slots so that women can be able to go to school. There has to be, take your girl child to school, all those campaigns, you know, to get the women to where we are today. So a lot has happened to women in Ghana to get us where we are today. And you know, we are grateful to God for that. Yeah, otherwise I won't be here. I won't be able to go to school. Because even for a father, there's more priority for the male child than the female child. Yeah.
So you guys are hearing this coming from this place of America where even the idea about Ghana is like this magical, amazing, I can do anything. But then you hear the realities that are on the ground from Fatia. And even you, and I'm sure you have lived experiences. So then let's talk about that.
Right. So when I'm here, we're talking about the intersections of our identity, right? Because I'm not just a woman, I'm a black woman.
Okay.
And so for me, what I resonate with this conversation, in America, for me, right, it's different for everybody. My blackness shows up first.
Yes, yes.
In Ghana, my womanhood shows up first, right? So it is a difference of how I even show up in spaces, just the mindfulness of I'm a woman in this space in a predominantly male, right? For the most part. And I think I will say, talking about and you can attest to this, I feel like in Ghana, there is this thing, African Americans are loud and aggressive and strong, disrespectful.
Hey, really disrespectful.
Right? How? And so, right, so we already have, right? We already have this ism about us here in Ghana, right? I'm also from Harlem. I'm from New York, right?
And
so
I understand that.
That
Harlem South to it.
So then there's that. But where I'm going with this is I felt, especially in spaces, being a black woman in Ghana, being in male spaces, I silenced myself because I allowed them to silence me. Because I felt that speaking up and speaking out to things that I know I should definitely have spoken out to, what happened was in the space, people were like, this African American woman. Right? And so when I first got to Ghana, I started to go like this because I'm like, oh, I'm doing too much. Oh, they're starting to think I'm this way. So so my voice started to go like this. And it was the very thing that I was fighting against doing in the States. Because it took me a long time to get a voice as a black woman in the States. So then I came to Ghana and I'm like, Liba, you going backwards, mama. So you have to find the balance, right? And we spoke about this fear versus flow, right? Knowing when to go like
when to flow.
When to fight and when to flow. So knowing when I'm speaking to this because I want to or need to or should be spoken to, and then knowing when I actually don't want to do this because I'm flowing right now, right? So I think for me that has been one of the biggest things is finding my voice and being true to it in a place where it's been a journey for women to have that voice. And I think I'll stop there because there's so many different, there's then also being American and then having a certain caliber of man try to talk to you.
Talk about it then.
I feel like
talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Well, before we go there though, I just will say I love hearing Fatia's perspective and, I think one thing about living here is that you really can't live here and not be amongst communities. So I have equal parts Ghanaian friends as I do expat friends, and all of my Ghanaian friends have really been the ones to help me navigate and learn. And the Ghanaian women, like, you know, I'm about to be of like child rearing age, so I'm like, how do I have the baby? What do I do? Like, you know, so the women, you know, have always embraced me and taken me in, and I think you won't survive in Ghana without a Ghana godmother. So shouts out to my Ghana godmother. I love you, Mohameda. I really do, and Yaba and all the rest of you. But being in Ghana, I recognize your perspective and I hear yours, but I feel quite privileged. I'm like, ooh, all I ever wanted in my life, especially in America, was just to be taken at face value. Like when you're in a space and people are like, oh, you don't belong in this space, you're a black woman, what do you possibly know? Then you come into a place where you're like, I'm a brilliant person, and people are like, of course you are. And then you're like, what? Did you just like notice that, like, okay, like let's just say on this point about Americans and having money. I wouldn't even say that I necessarily had money. My family was very like upper middle class, working middle class, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, no matter what you were working towards, right, you could be outside of your own house and not feel comfortable because you're pulling up in a Mercedes and you gotta wonder if somebody thinks you stole that Mercedes, right? Here, I'm pulling up in a Mercedes, so is she, so is she, so is he, and it's like, or whatever you have, a Kia Picanto, anything, but like nobody has this assumption like you don't deserve it. So especially me being American, right? And I hear you on your point, blackness shows up and then womanhood shows up, but for me, nothing shows up. So I'm like, great, nothing shows up. Nothing shows up. I can just do what I want to do, afford what I can afford, and go places, and everyone's like, of course she can. Sounds right. Yeah, like,
but can I ask you, so you're saying that you think it's not because you're American that people are thinking, of course you can. That's what you're saying. Like you're saying you can show up like that, Ghanaians can show up like that, everyone can show up like that.
No. Sorry, what I'm saying, just to be clear, is that, and this is why I even started with Fatia's perspective and recognizing it, is that unfortunately the disconnect is that I don't feel that way, right?
I get you.
What she's feeling, I feel quite the opposite. I feel so much privilege. I feel so much privilege. I have to check it all the time. I'm like, I'm a basically well-educated, well-financed, and well-looking, I suppose. Cute black. Come on. Okay, this one, the cute black. Come in. I am cute black. Nobody ever stops me. Like, you got to think about it, right? Put yourself in a position where you're Oprah and you're a billionaire, and you can still walk into a store and somebody not give you service. Here in Ghana, you walk into a store and whatever it is that they're thinking, oh, Bernie, she has money, it's paved in gold, but no matter which way, you want to know what size shoe I wear because you know I can afford the shoes. You're not thinking I'm coming in here to rob you of your shoes. So now I get to go, nothing shows up when I walk in, I'm just a customer. Not a certain type of customer, just a customer.